Hey, welcome everybody. Welcome to the Local Growth Podcast. Today I've got one of my good friends, and many of you probably already know him, Aiden Smith from Paint Pro Coaching. So, Aiden, thanks for taking the time to join with us, man. I wanted to kind of just bring you on, and every time we chat, man, I always learn something. I always find a ton of value, and I just wanted to kind of just explore some of what you do and what you know, and see how we can help and give back to the community.
Yeah, man. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me. Dude, I love podcasts. I love the long form, right? Like there's nothing like sitting in person with somebody, right? Like,
Yeah.
but I think if you can just kind of dig on somebody's brain and what they're about, you can learn a little more and you can kind of relate to them a little better, you know?
Oh, 100%. I get deep in the weeds in psychology personally, and I find it interesting. There's a concept like you're never going to actually have full understanding of who you are.
Mm-hmm.
No one person, even a spouse, is ever going to know everything that's in your mind and every perspective and every thought and every belief, right? You can get closer over time and you can get closer in long format. We're never going to know everything. But I think
Yeah.
as far as media is concerned, podcasts about as close as you can get, really gets to let you know who people are and
Mm-hmm.
much better than like short ads and blogs and some of the other stuff. So I love
Yeah.
them too, man. I'm glad you're here, brother. Well,
Yeah, it's
dude,
so funny because one second. When I was doing my podcast yesterday and I was re-listening to it, I was like, I need to shut up. You also need to get that dynamic of like, you need to let the other person breathe. And I'm out here, over his voice and cutting him off. And I was like, damn, I need to get better at this. But we're working.
dude, communication is like an amazing art. I I remember, I know we were just talking a little bit ago about like helping one of our painter friends with like some overcoming some sales issues and stuff.
Sure.
Like, when I was younger, my dad owned an insurance agency, and I went and did some like door to door kind of sales, and I learned a lot about sales. But at the time, I really hated it. I just had this really kind of old school mentality about sales. I thought sales was like bad, kind of portrayed bad in most movies. You know what I mean? Like salespeople
Yep.
are kind of the evil person, and I had that portrayal, and I didn't realize how helpful it really is when it's done right. I just had these like negative connotations, and for me to overcome it was really like following some of the Chris Voss's and Jeremy Miners and some of the other people, where the just the language of how we approach sales changes. And it's not like sales like I'm trying to like drill this thing into you. It becomes more of a consulting advisory thing where I'm genuinely trying to drive you to the best choice for you, whether that's
Yeah.
with me or not. And like once I discovered that, I was like, oh, I
Mm-hmm.
like this.
I agree.
Yeah.
It is something that if you're not comfortable with yourself either, or what you bring to the table and the value you can bring, once you find okay, you are a good fit for what I do, it does feel weird, because you're not used to it, one, and then again you have that connotation like, I don't want to be that pushy salesman. I hear that all the time. I don't
Yeah.
want to be pushy. I don't want to go and ask for the closer, ask for their business. And it's like, well,
I
think of
hear
it,
that all
if
the time
you
too.
yeah, and it's like if you leave, let's just say you're a painter on an appointment. If you leave, the chances, one, of them going with you drop dramatically, right?
Oh yeah.
But two, if you leave now, you're opening up, hey, well, let's find this other guy and give them a chance. And now maybe they went with a lesser company, right? Just because they wanted to save a couple bucks
Or they
because
can pit
you
against each other in price wars and compare.
yeah,
Yeah,
right.
yeah,
And it's like, well, you could have been that awesome go-to service, that high-end company that delivered that awesome experience, but now you just lost that for a couple $100 because you didn't educate them on the benefits, or say, hey, can we compare apples to apples, right?
Well, and I think it's probably true for most people. Is like that connotation that I had. I hated sales,
Hmm.
hated. Didn't want nothing to do with it. Ended up quitting that insurance thing for that reason. And then it was years later. I was like, oh, I actually kind of like this, but done this way.
Yep.
And I think most of our clients. We have some clients that are mutual between us, and like all the painters I work with, they are genuinely really great craftspeople. You know,
For sure.
it's really hard to build a great company on a really bad product or service. But so if you're like really great at being a craftsman, then it's just a new skill to learn how to sell.
Yeah.
You know, and I
Hmm.
think if you're really great, if you truly believe you're great, and there's other companies in the area that you're better than, I almost think it's almost like a responsibility.
100%.
You know what I
Right.
mean?
You got to work on, hey, how am I going to educate them that they are getting the real deal? And that's one of the reasons why we implemented a sales packet. And this is, a little something that we said, hey, let's take some time to put something together, because yes, the website that does that job, but let's just say they missed the website for whatever reason. Maybe they came through a funnel. It's like, this
Mhm.
is another way to say, hey, here's about us. Here's what we do. And if I don't get that across in person as good as I'd want to, especially early on when I'm not as good at sales, if I was just starting out, that at least covers a lot of my bases on the processes, what sets us apart about us. So it's like you get that information at least, and that helps you a lot to go close the deal.
100%. Most of my best clients have a sales packet, like a
Mm-hmm.
folder or a little mini magazine or pamphlet, or like there's a few different physical formats it could be in, but like I'm all about it. You know how many
Mm-hmm.
painters show up with a packet to leave their customer? I mean, it's like 1 in 100.
Well,
You're
exactly.
already in the top elite just by doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And what is it? I don't know what your unit cost is on that, but I know most of mine are like $2 to $5, like per
Dude,
packet.
it's crazy. A little tech savvy and a little plug you guys can use, but we actually implemented in our drip sequence using drip
Yeah,
jobs.
that's
So
awesome. Or
30
like a
minutes.
like a PDF version or something, like a digital flipbook kind of.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. It's hosted on Canva. 30 minutes after, they get a link that says, here's about us. Here's an info packet, sets our standards, processes, and about us. And it's like, our families at the front, right? Family owned
Mhm.
business. And man, it's been effective.
That's awesome. I love the concept of prepping people for what's about to happen,
Yes.
right? So I learned this really weird saying, and if you've never heard it, you'll probably make it giggle a little bit. It's called the tell 'em sandwich, right? I
Mm,
learned this in the military years ago. It's like you want to tell people what you're about to tell them, then you tell them, and then you tell them what you just told them. You know what I mean? And like we see this in all sorts of content. Where like, a blog might have like an introduction and then some teaching and then a recap. If I was writing like a formal essay, I'd have an introduction and teaching and then a recap, right?
yeah.
But I don't know who invented it, I don't know where it came from, but it's just the way the brain works. Like
I was
if I
about to
just
say it's
go into, if I just,
psychological.
yeah, if I go into a sales presentation, I teach like all these crazy things and there's no prep for that.
Yeah.
It's hard to engage with. But if I can give them a little taste of what we're going to go over,
Yeah.
then they're mentally prepped. Now, you don't have to go to every detail, but just a little outline, a little bit about you, a little bit of what you're going to cover before you show up.
Hmm.
Man, it sets you apart from professional standpoint, but it also like from the psychological standpoint, it's a win.
And how many times do you feel like you're overwhelming a client when you only have one initial interaction with them on the estimate, and you
Yeah.
haven't, and you're trying to get all this information across, and it's like you're talking numbers, you're
People don't
talking
retain
about
100% of
you.
what you say,
It's
like
a
ever.
lot, right? So that lowers your chances of actually getting that deal as well, right?
Yeah.
And some of the best people I've seen in the biggest companies, they'll actually plan out hiring a videographer, getting somebody to record all the scripts and kind of pre-plan it and do a what to expect video,
I think it's
right?
fantastic.
Like
Yeah. Yeah.
Elite Home Renovations with Nick, right? It's
Yep.
like his is
Um,
amazing, and he has one custom for interior, exterior,
Brad
and
Ellison does the
cabinets.
same thing, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah, it's a really really good idea to do. It's more expensive than the PDF flip book, but even if it was just processes in an email, that's better than nothing. And then
Hmm.
you can elevate that with like a web page or PDF or flip book or something, and
Yeah.
even higher than that would be like the video. You
Yeah,
know,
for sure.
but even if like you got a low budget, you can still move towards that professionalism side without going and spending several $1,000s on like a video. You know,
Yeah.
uh,
And
an
you know
after an
more.
afternoon with Canva, and you can have something that's way better than nothing. You know,
Yeah. Yeah. And you know better than everybody, like your presence beforehand, you start selling as soon as they see you anywhere or even hear about
yeah,
you. So
yeah.
it's like you need to set that tone all the way across,
Hmm.
right? From the final invoice, you're continuing to sell. And it's like, hey, how can we earn your business again? How could we get referrals from you? And you're just making it so much easier when it's all professional, all kind of set, streamlined, and easy to read, easy to look at, nice,
Hmm.
branded, the whole nine. You need that. It's like a cost of doing business right now.
I don't know personally. No, I'm sure there's some out there, but I don't personally know any profitable, healthy paint company or any contracting company for that matter that doesn't have a decent brand, a
Mm-hmm.
decent website, some decent marketing materials, t-shirts, van wraps, things like that, some sort of presentation, maybe it's a tablet, maybe it's a PDF, maybe it's a video. I mean, some choices there, but something, and a decent, well-established sales process.
Yep.
You know what I mean? It is. You said it right. It's like the bare minimum,
Yeah.
right? Everyone that I talk to when I'm doing like consults and stuff like that, that's struggling with becoming profitable or not getting from 500K to a million or whatever growth objective, it's always one or more of those things in that sales process.
Mm.
Yeah.
And let me ask you this: what revenue stage would you say, hey, I need to get really serious about this, the branding and the look, right? Because obviously it'd be great to do it all at first, right? Like if you had the money to put to the brand, the website, the whole throughout process. But like at what revenue point do you say, hey, let's take this serious? Because I've noticed, working with guys just starting out all the way up to, a couple million, that the early guys just don't have the budget for it. Right.
100%. Yeah. It's hard to say in like one distinct statement, but I would say like the way that I personally try to describe it is there are multiple areas of your business. And if we think of like like a bar graph or something, right? I've got like branding, and then I've got like, maybe my phone answering, like appointment setting kind of thing. I've got my closing ability. I've got my production ability. I've
Yeah.
got admin and finance and other things. Like there's multiple things that happen in a business, right? And if you imagine just each one of those is like a bar graph, should you leave like 4 of 5 things at like 1 and make the other one go to 10? Probably
Mm,
not. You like, they kind of all work together. Like you said, it's one giant process, right?
yeah.
So what I think is better is like elevate your branding from a 1 to a 2, elevate your appointment setting from a 1 to a 2, and
Hmm.
then like go through that whole thing all the way down the chain of processes.
I
And,
totally agree.
and then when you do that, it will have an increase on repeat clients and close rates and branding and more leads and all that stuff. And then when you can reinvest again back in the front, you raise the bar again.
Yeah.
Like some of these branding companies, man, they'll charge 15, 25, $50,000 for brand. What $500,000 company can afford that?
No,
Uh,
exactly.
You know, there's a
You,
time and a place for like a cheap website. There's a time and a place. Like even you said like you do like a PDF version of that, what to expect.
yep.
I'm assuming, correct me if I'm wrong, you probably have plans at some point to make a video version of that too, right?
Yeah,
Right.
exactly. We're getting our ads, defined right now, but I think
Hmm.
that's coming for sure.
Yeah, exactly. So like, I mean, that's just another form of elevation of that same thing, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
I'm a big proponent of, because obviously for me, once people join what we're doing in the coaching, we set them up with here's all the things you do, right?
yeah,
And do it as soon as you
and that
can.
can be overwhelming too because it's a
It
lot.
can be,
Yeah,
right? Because
yeah.
you can't even do certain stuff. Like I can't create a professional website without my logo
No, you can't.
or like my real branding, right? And that's why you guys do that work, because you're
Yeah.
cognizant of that, right?
Yep.
And it's like for me, I've been recommending a lot of people look into ways that you could get some initial funding for this stuff, because it will come back in troves, right? So
Yeah,
if I'm an early on entrepreneur and I'm like, hey, this business is what I want to do, I'm good at it, I proved the concept, let's make it work. Okay, why don't you go out and find a credit card with like an 18-month no interest, right? Now,
yeah,
once the busy season comes up, let's just say you spend 5K in all of that investment initially for the marketing and the brand and look. You at least have something now that's going to make you way more money down the line, allow you to be more profitable. And then you have 18 months to take, once you have your best month, to take care of that bill.
for sure. Yeah.
That tactic has been money for so many people in what we do. It's helped me early on as
I,
well.
I love that idea with the caveat that you have to know that you're on the hook for that and you got to bust your
For
butt.
sure.
You know what I mean? You can't like,
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't want someone like racking up a credit card bill and being like, oh, I'm just going to sit back and just chill. No, man,
Yeah.
you got to grind. You got to grind for
Credit
sure.
cards have that stigma too, man. It's
They
like when I
do.
first had that conversation, they're kind of like, oh, I don't know. I was thinking about a loan. And I'm like, trust me, look.
I almost think some in various points in business, like sometimes taking the slight overcommitment is actually like energy to like hiring a new painter.
Yeah.
Like, what about the guys that are like solopreneurs or maybe like one person and like an assistant, and then they want to hire an admin person, or they want to grow up to like a full 3-person crew or 4-person crew, whenever you make that jump, all of a sudden it's like, well, dude, I gotta market and sell better because I've got this commitment, right? That commitment could be a team member. It could be a new ad channel. It could be a credit card bill. Like it could be a few things. I find for me that when I make those leaps, like I'm like, oh crap, there's this responsibility now, and I've
Yeah.
got to see that. So I self-inflict those on myself to kind of make myself grow faster.
Dude, you need that fire under your ass though.
Yeah,
Like
I
for me
agree.
right now, we're searching for a sales rep just because I'm too busy with two businesses, right?
Yeah,
No way I can do my coaching the way we're growing and the painting business the way that's growing as well, and then be sane with my life. There's just no way.
yeah,
So I'm like, I need somebody to come on and really be that hustler to help me while I inject more marketing and help them with leads, right? Set them up for success to go out and get some extra self-generated stuff at a higher commission. But like if I bring that person on, now it's like I got to keep them busy with appointments. I got to get everything rolling. So
yeah,
that's one of the reasons that we signed up with you for the website to make sure that that's set up for the near future, and
yep,
also joining Lucas and FMM, because it's like I need the best high quality leads to set this guy for success. I need to spend to make sure these leads are going to come in. I'm going to hit my goals, right?
yep.
Because most people don't realize how much they have to spend to hit their revenue goals. That's huge.
You know, there's a few people like there's some dedicated painter CPAs and Nick Slavic and things like that. Like there's some people that like have a ton of experience with like painters and mass, right? And what's interesting is if you look at the numbers on what the average marketing spend is, it's somewhere between 5 and 15% of your revenue. Now that's a big giant margin, right? But that's a hard pill to swallow. Even 5%. Like I talk to people like, oh man, I spend like 0.5% of my budget back on marketing last year. And I'm like, well, that's why you didn't grow, you
Mm-hmm.
know? Um,
Exactly.
and I'm not saying that someone go from 0% to 15%, but like, and there's normally a few things. I know you're big on pricing, right? So like,
Yeah.
like that's one of the big things. I love how good you are at that. And I see all the help that you do. When priced right though, you should have the margins in your business to be able to reinvest 5, 10, 15% back in
Exactly.
marketing, you know?
We do a lot of work with that. So one of the little re I would say resources I provide is we figure out how much it costs for you for one painter or average painter plus burden, right? So what's your
Yeah.
average hourly cost that it costs you on the job? Obviously, we get in your material costs as well, but I can confidently help you say, hey, every project we send a bid out for, as long as we're using our system, you're going to be at your ideal gross margin, whether that's 50% or you have a lot of overhead and you want to be at 55%, right? Wherever
Hmm.
you want to be, we can help you hit that. And that's going to allow you to say, wow, we actually can deny projects because we know that's not profitable for our business and it's not
Yeah.
going to help us.
Yeah.
That is a big thing that you can have in the back of your mind, that I get some closure knowing that this job is going to be profitable as long as my production's all set up properly.
Have you ever seen people that like have like too high of a close rate, and you know that they're only too high because they're massively underpricing their bids?
Yeah, it doesn't happen often.
I've seen a few. No, I mean it's, and you normally see
But
people that can't close at all, but every once in a
yeah,
while I'll see people that like their like close rates are like 80, 80. I saw talk with a guy last week. I think his close rate was like 87%, and I'm like, huh? And then
no.
we dove into gross profit margins, and it was like massively unhealthy. And I was like, oh, okay, that makes more sense. You know?
100%.
Yeah,
Or they overwhelm their schedule and they're like, oh, I got so much work, but I don't know where the money's going. And it's like, well, you don't know your numbers, right?
yeah.
And whenever you have somebody that says, hey, I have this such high close rate, that's when you got to really dig deep and say, okay, let's uncover why that is. And again, like you said, you realize that I'm not charging nearly enough, right?
I think honestly, even if you had, let's just say you had 50% margins, and when you first start closing at 50% margins, maybe your close rate's 50%. And then like you can keeping the margins the same all of a sudden because you've learned better, you've improved your processes and skills and all that stuff. And all of a sudden you start closing at 75%, 80%, probably time to raise your prices again. Maybe,
100%.
maybe go to 55% gross profit
Hmm.
margins, you know?
Which is a
Um,
good thing all across the board. And what's cool is, like you said, right, there's that big initially, yes, you have to spend more. It's going to be up to that 15 border mark, right? Even sometimes more, depending. But like if you think about, all right, if I invest in my brand, my across the board, how we're perceived, we can charge more and our marketing costs go down.
yeah.
You don't need as many leads. You're closing more. You're more profitable.
one of the interesting things I find with marketing and branding and growing your business in general is like, we just talked about the 5 to 15% range. What I find is that people that are under $1 million in their paint company, if they're growing at all, they're typically above 10, approaching 15%.
Yeah.
Because their brand power and recognition and their processes aren't as stronger. Their brand doesn't have as much recognition. They don't have as many like systems to get reviews consistently or get repeat customers consistently, or you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And maybe some production issues happen every now and again that leads to a bad review or loss in revenue and like repainting something or whatever, right? Just
Yeah.
processes in general can cause all sorts of little hiccups and problems. And those things affect the bottom line and profit, which means I
100%.
now need to spend more money on marketing to, you know what I mean? So what's
Mm-hmm.
interesting is like when you get to companies that are like multiple millions, the cost per customer goes down, not
Yeah.
up,
I have a
almost every time.
I have a question for you too. I had a coaching call recently. I was on it. It was another coach, and he has a client. He's taking his company. I'm not gonna say names, but he's taking his company from around 1.5 to next year 5 million.
It's a big jump.
That's a big jump.
It's a big jump.
What does that conversation look like for you if that's your client on like, hey, is the spending, and what expectations do you give them? Because I know you deal with Google and even some Facebook stuff. Like, what does that conversation look like?
I think whenever I see someone that has really giant gaps like that, I want to prep them for how much it's going to cost to get there because it's a lot more than they think.
Yeah.
So, like, let's just say using even numbers, let's just say it takes 10% to kind of grow at like a rate like this, right? And if you're $1 million, that's $100,000 over the year, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you want to take that growth curve and go from here to there. It means you can't spend 10% of your current revenue. You need to be spending somewhere between like probably closer to 10 to 15% of your revenue goal.
Yep.
Right. So if you're at 1.5, that's $150,000 a year. You can't spend $150,000 a year to get to 5 million a year. Not in 1 year. I don't think it's, I think you'd have to be closer, not necessarily all the way. It doesn't have to necessarily be 10% of the 5 million,
Mm-hmm.
but it's going to be way above 10% of the current goal. And so
Yeah,
it
you're
would
gonna be
probably,
hurting early on,
yeah.
big time.
Um, a lot of marketing does though, right? And so like anytime you have like, I mean, think how much it costs to like wrap a truck. That's
Mm-hmm.
not cheap,
Not
right?
cheap.
It's somewhere between 2 to 5 grand typically to wrap
Mm-hmm.
trucks. So let's just say we're like 3,500 average, give or take. That's a chunk of change,
Yeah.
right? But what's the long-term ROI?
Huge.
As long as you're not buying like a 50-year-old beater that you're wrapping, as long as you're buying relatively new cars, you're probably going to get 5, 10, 15 years out of that wrap,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Yeah.
And then so like, but you have to pay for it all at once.
Mm-hmm.
You pay for it now and then you receive the benefits over a long time. The hardest part about making a big leap like that is you're going to have a ton of new things you're going to have to do that with. It
Right.
probably looks like new videos, new website, new sales system, new sales hire. Like multiple things have to kind of go up all at once, and they're
Yeah.
all expensive.
And you know what else people don't even consider is there's a human element to it too, right? 1.5 to 5 is a lot of residential jobs. That's a lot of people that you're dealing with. Maybe does some commercial, right? But it's like how
Yeah.
much more people have to get to know and trust your brand. Like, I mean, that's what, more
And
than
how many more
triple or
people do
something.
you need to bring onto your team too?
Yeah.
There's a lot of HR that goes in that kind of scale. You're talking about 3x in your company essentially, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that means you got one PM, you need three. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? You got one crew, you need three. Like you're just not going to do it with the same amount of painters. You might need a second admin to
Mm-hmm.
help answer phones. Maybe you need.
Project coordinator, a position that you don't even think about until you get to that point, right?
I
Somebody
know.
that's just responsible for scheduling, moving things back, moving things up.
You might even end up with like a part-time or full-time HR person at that point,
Yeah.
someone to help recruit painters. Because that, like, I mean, recruiting, it has a lot in common with marketing. It's essentially persuasion of a type.
Yeah.
There's more in common with marketing and hiring than there are differences. But like you hire a marketer, right? At some point, you're gonna have to hire, someone to help interview and bring them painters, or that's all you're going to be doing.
Yeah.
You know,
Facts.
so you know, um,
I love that you brought up the HR because I think we both were in corporate America at one point. I think we had this conversation,
Uh-huh.
but like you said, right? When you're at 5 million, it is no longer hey, everybody, here's your jobs, go do them. It's like, no, you got leaders, you got people reporting to people, right?
Mm-hmm.
And dude, it's such a different business, right?
It is.
So I'm excited at the end of the year to go to this person and kind of debrief. I'm like, hey, how did everything go? What were the changes? Maybe that'd be a good podcast. I'll tell you after, who it
Yeah,
is
I
and
love to hear
whatnot.
it. Yeah.
That would be good.
Well,
Um,
Jason Phillips is a good example in that space. It's
mm-hmm.
like uh a great thought leader in the space, and I follow him, and I've had a podcast with him, and he's a great dude. Everything he says is fantastic. But think about his position. I think if I remember right, he did like around 13 million last year,
Yeah.
right? And so at that point, you are no longer a leader of a team. You are a leader of other leaders that are managing other teams, right? It's like another nested layer. So, I mean, he's not like managing individual field techs,
Yeah.
he's managing department heads who are then managing their teams,
Yeah. And
and
that's
so yeah.
not something you can just walk into role wise.
No,
You got to
you have
build
to
to be
slowly
that
evolve
person.
to that, right?
Yes.
It's a learned skill. Leadership is a skill.
Exactly.
Um, I don't know that. I mean, there's probably some people that are innately good at it at leadership, but for at least for me, it's not probably because I'm tech savvy. My brain works in like ones and zeros,
Little
like but
coding brain
yeah,
just
dude.
going.
I think I commonly think about things in if else statements, like day to day
Mm,
life. I think in if else statements. It's really really weird. You don't want to be in my head. But for me, like leadership is like it's a constant learning thing.
yeah. Mm.
It's tough. Motivating and having team members that are part of a vision. It's a hard thing.
It's a huge responsibility.
Well, yeah, it's a big responsibility.
Th-
Um,
Think about the discipline that you have to carry in your life, right? Think about when nobody's looking, what are you doing, right? Like you are almost now a public figure when you run a company of his size, right? Obviously, he's doing
yeah,
events and whatnot, but
yep,
it's like you are in your own organization a public figure where people look up to, look for guidance, at least the good ones, right?
yeah. And
um,
what happens if like you go out on a bender and you get a DUI, or you cheat on your wife,
exactly.
or you have a vendor and you mistreat them, and you have that, like, what does that say about you as a person to the rest of the team that's there, right?
It's
Um,
huge.
have you ever heard of a guy named Simon Sinek? Are you familiar with him?
Mm-mm.
So he's a really huge person in the leadership space. Like his whole business model is he coaches leaders. That's what he does. He's a TED Talk speaker and stuff. Got really a couple of really great books, a bunch of great TED Talks, and does coaching. I've bought a few of his programs and stuff. I've learned a lot from him. But
Yeah.
he has this one little short video where he talks about how he came into a hotel. I don't remember what kind of hotel it was, and he met like a bellboy or whatever. He's like, "Hey, how you doing?" And he asked because he's in like that kind of space, like, do you like your job? And the guy's like, "I love my job." And he's like, "Oh, that's pretty cool." And like my line of work, that's a really good thing. It's a good indicator. And
Yeah.
he asked that person, why do they love their job? And he's like, well, because on a day-to-day basis, keep in mind, it's like a bellboy, right? It's like on a day-to-day basis, all the managers at every level, like if they pass me by, they're just always asking like, "Hey man, how's it going with you? Is there anything I can
Mm.
do to help you?" Right. And then the bellboy proceeds to tell Simon, I also have another job, like a night and weekend job at a different hotel. And there it's different. The
Trash.
managers don't ask me how I can help. They're constantly on lookout for what I mess up, and then they publicly like reprimand you when you
Yeah.
make mistakes. And he's like, there, I'm not happy about my job. I go in, I do the very bare minimum, and I clock out. And his point was this: the same person, the same exact human being, in two different environments had two different outcomes. And so,
It's
like
huge.
as a leader, that for me was like powerful, like really
Mm-hmm.
really powerful.
No, and
Um,
it's a lot. It's like that at a lot of,
it is.
especially like right painting businesses. They had to figure out how to get these jobs done and get these people into play just to cover their production. Not even thinking, oh, I'm getting this person to the next level in my organization. They're probably not even thinking that far.
Not
They
yet.
are hiring out of necessity, right? So these guys, they
Mhm.
come with these problems, and you'd be surprised how many. Probably not surprised, but it's amazing how many people come into certain organizations, right, as painters, as maybe production managers, and then after 2 weeks they're out. And it's like, oh, that guy wasn't a good fit. Oh, he sucked or whatever reason. And it's like, you didn't even take the time. One, your pre-screen process probably trash, but
Probably. Yep.
you probably didn't take the time to really understand what this person needed to be successful, or even had him prepared, right, with SOPs or
I probably
written
had no
down day to
training, no
day, no training.
SOPs, no
Exactly.
feedback loops, no retraining, you
You're
know?
setting them up for failure. That's essentially what you're doing, right?
Yeah.
So, if you don't have the time, and dude, you could use ChatGPT for this, right?
Yeah, you can.
How do I train a painter that comes into my organization? How do I train a
Sure
production
can.
manager, right? It will give you what you need relatively close. I've tried it before.
Yeah,
And
it's actually really good. It's
yeah,
I've done it too. I've used it to have some of my clients have like guidelines of like here's what an employee handbook should look like, and it'll kind of
yeah,
spit out some things. And you know, like at a core level, like when you bring someone on, I think the high level is like I've heard this from a few different people, a few different ways, and I believe this to be true. Like as a business owner, as a leader, you have to set a vision that's high enough that encompasses the goals and visions of the other people in your organization.
hmm,
If someone inside of your company has a bigger goal than you, they're going to leave,
yeah,
you know? And so that's another big responsibility. If I have this big vision, like of where I want to go, and I know that I need to think about the goals of the other people in the organization, how am now the next thing is the plan. How am I going to get them there?
yeah.
You know, and like
I,
how many painters have you met that have no like promotion plan, or like
oh,
a
dude.
painter comes to the boss and says like, hey, I know you've been paying me $20 an hour. I think I'm worth 22. Can I have a raise? What's the plan? How do you
Hmm.
handle that? Do you have like a time/proficiency based like income growth plan for
Yeah.
you people? Do you have like different positions with different pay scales? Like what do you do? And if
And
you
what's
haven't,
cool is, yeah, once you develop that system, right, you start to even think about other systems in your business that you can do that with and have more structure, right?
100%.
So for me, and you touched on like the estimating stuff, it's like if I can't properly explain to my customer why we came to the price we came to, it's not going to be good for anybody,
Yeah.
right? Because now
Yeah.
I just look like I'm winging it. So it's
Yeah.
like, what else are you winging, right?
Yep.
So it's not a good precedent, one. But two, when your guys say, hey, or your subcontractor, hey, I think you underpaid me for this job. Well, now we're based off feelings. I can't even go to the data and say, well, here's how many hours we have spec for this. Here's the prep we involved to make sure you are set up for success, right? If you
Here's
don't
the
have
material
that,
cost, and
I
yeah,
mean, man,
yeah.
again, you're at a disadvantage, and now you don't look like the guy who has it together. Who would want to work for somebody that doesn't have those things together, right?
Dude, every business like needs systems, and I think even big businesses when they have systems, like the I think the fastest way to grow a business is by focusing on systems and putting people and developing people to help run those systems.
Yeah, and
You
it's
know,
simple too. Doesn't have to be super complex.
doesn't have to
Like
be.
I was reading, or I'm reading right now, Dan Martell book, and
The buy back your time book.
Buy Back Your Time,
Uh-huh.
the best. Two
Yeah.
two points actually. He
Yep.
says, ask everybody you're hiring what's their 5-year plan, so you can see if you even fit into that plan, and if you can
Right.
make that come true. Because if you can't, they're better off going somewhere else. Because ultimately, they won't be happy, right?
Yep.
So it's not worth it, even if they're a great candidate. Just don't
Yep.
align. And
Hmm.
then two, you need to find people that are smarter than you in certain areas and have them develop the SOPs in your business.
It's funny
That's
you say
huge.
that. Like I have a few SOPs in my business that I've written, but most of my SOPs are written by my team.
It's a
Almost
good
all of
owner.
them are. Yeah. Because like why would I write um for transport? I know most people like know me as like the web guy, but I'm actually not the web guy.
Mm,
My wife actually runs the web department. She's the web ninja on our team,
nice.
right? I can build websites. I have the technical proficiency too. Like I
Right, like I
can.
can paint.
Yeah, like yeah, you can paint, but are you the best painter? No, I can build some websites and I can do some reasonably professional stuff, but I can't build what our company builds. She does that.
Yeah.
And so, like, who built the web SOPs? It definitely was not me. It was her.
Mhm.
And then I have other people on the team that do other SOPs. Like, you have to put the like if you had like I don't know, maybe you have an interior painter, a cabinet painter. Who's going to do the cabinet painting SOPs? The regular guy or the cabinet guy?
Cabinet guy,
Probably the
yeah.
cabinet guy. You got to be the best person in that role to do those SOPs. They know what they're doing, and then you
You're
got to trust.
also empowering them. It's a switch of the way they think now. They're not
Yeah,
just following rules.
they become bought in.
They're responsible for their own what they set up. They laid their own bed. you
Well,
know?
Dan, since you're reading that book, it sounds like I'm not sure if you're all the way through it. You said that you're still reading it.
Yeah.
He talks about a principle where he's like, and this is from him. He says, when I'm teaching one of my employees, or I'm trying to get them to do something, all I do is paint a picture of what it looks like when it's done right. I don't
Yeah.
talk about the steps of how it's done. I let them solve that. And if
Hmm.
they ask me for details, he says he plays ignorant. Like, I don't know. This is what
It's
it looks like when
huge.
it's done right. And
Right.
that empowers them to create their own processes, their own things. And it also, I think there's a huge, like the undertone there that not only does it empower them to do that, but it also makes them feel valued. Like if
Yep.
they've contributed to the process, they're not just a monkey turning a wrench, doing it like the thing. It's not like, you walk into McDonald's, are you going to have any process input? No, dude, you're just going to put this thing in a fryer and push a
Yeah.
button and it's going to beep at you and tell you when to take it out. And then you're going to put it on a bun and hand it to somebody, right? That's all you're
Exactly.
doing. It's like, I would get very, very little enjoyment out of that. But like, if you're part of a paint team and like you're responsible for like, I don't know, the prep of cabinets and how to paint cabinets, what product line you use and the
Yeah.
timing, like that's cool, man. You
Hmm.
know, that's really cool.
And that kind of goes into, and I know we're getting deep into like the painting, but let's just say I hire a production manager and we use this same concept.
Yeah.
Like, hey, we'll give you some, hey, here's how we do stuff right now, but we would really like you to bring in your level of expertise, or put your spin on how production should be ran. After a little bit, you're going to fall, right? You're going to figure things out, and then you're going to start putting pieces together. Okay, this works like this. This guy, he likes his paint delivered right before the job, right? You start coming up with your own systems, and now you just got your time back, and you're making the same money, if not more, because you're producing more efficiently. And
Mm-hmm.
I watched something before, and they said that for a painting company, some of the best production managers barely leave their house.
Oh,
I mean,
interesting.
that's pretty powerful,
That's
right?
really
Because
cool.
if I'm a production manager and I'm empowering the supervisors, that's kind of what I do in my business right now. We're at a point where we're like not there for a production manager, but I need to empower all my subcontractors, whoever's the supervisor. You take everything start to finish, right? So if I'm the production manager and I'm setting up all the systems for the guys to do so, giving them software, giving them things they can do to be a little bit more efficient, right, with their work and jobs, and I don't have to necessarily go and visit and check in because they're all set up for success. Me as the owner, I don't care what you do. We're producing, the margins right, right? We're getting good reviews. There's no reason that I should say that you're not doing your job if you're on a golf course on a Wednesday. That's just my opinion. Some people may disagree.
I think that the people that would disagree with that don't run big companies,
Mm-hmm.
right? I think like, to go fast, go alone, to go far, go together.
Mm-hmm.
Like you can't build a big company and go to build a big team that's doing high revenue numbers by yourself. It requires a team. And
Mm-hmm.
and anytime you have a team, you have to be able to put trust in that person.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you ever see people that struggle with trust with like when they're hiring painters and getting started? I see
Oh,
that a
dude,
lot.
all the time. I
Yeah.
mean, even with subcontractors, people feel such a bad connotation to them, right? They think that, oh, well, it's not my W-2 guy on the job, so the customer might be weary and they might bring their own, van with logos on it. Like, I can't have that. Well, it's like, no, you set up certain things, and you also have a standard, right? And that kind of
Yeah.
goes with the brand and the respect of things. If I
Hmm.
look the part, you meet me and I seem the part and I have my systems in place and everything's set up, people are going to fall in line a little bit more and respect you a little bit more than the guy that says, yeah, go give me a price. We'll mark it up. If we get it, great, go do it. That's our business model. That is
Yeah.
not sustainable whatsoever. You will have so many issues, right? Like I tell people, hey, if you hire a subcontractor, they can go use your Sherwin-Williams account as long as they're not getting their investments, like their paintbrushes. That's investments in their own business, technically. Get
Yeah.
your supplies, your soft supplies, your plastic, your paint. Once you start buying step stools, roll like poles for your, painting supplies, now it's like too much. For our guys, they know that, and there's a fine line, and it's like a wild statement to say, oh, they can't use my account. I have to be responsible for that.
Yeah.
I have to have my name and say only Aiden purchases a paint. I have to call in, and it's like now you're a slave to your business. Nobody's ever going to be able to carry out tasks for you.
Well, that
You're
goes
always
back
going to
to
be
systems. If you
involved.
just define it and tell people what the definition is, like
Exactly.
here's our process, here's what you do. I think that so many problems go away once you start making those definitions.
Yeah, I agree. You know what I want to pick your brain about? Because
What's
you
up?
don't deal just with painting companies.
Yeah, true. Mostly painters, but yeah, that's true.
Right, but coding companies, right? Other construction
Oh
I've
yeah.
saw.
Hmm.
What are some differences you've seen in mentality as far as like, hey, what painting companies want to be seen as versus these construction companies, and have you seen different like success in the way their businesses are set up? Because I deal with mostly painters as well, so I barely know.
We don't really do construction companies. We do home service trades. So like I think it's somewhere 80-85% of our clients are painters, and there's a certain percentage that are other trades, but it's all like some form of home services. So like general contractors or like apartment builders or home builders, we don't service those guys. It's a completely different business model. But like one of the niches that we serve pretty regularly is landscape design. It's still a
Mm,
beautification service, right? Also remodeling. So
yeah,
painters, remodeling, and landscape designs is most of our clients. There's a couple exceptions to that, but that's most of our clients.
and you have
And
those guys on coaching calls.
yeah,
What do you
yeah,
see
and what's
differences?
interesting is it's really not much different. It's
Mm.
really not. You'd think, oh, it's a complete. I think this is also like opens a whole can of worms. You know how many times I've heard people say, "You don't own a paint company, so you can't market my paint company. You don't own a paint company, so you can't tell me how I should sell." You know how
Yeah.
many people say that stuff? At the end of the day, man, people are people. People make decisions the same way, no matter who they are,
Hmm.
no matter what religion they are, no matter what job they have. Now, your influences may change outcomes, but the
Yeah.
way that humans make decisions, the way we process information is psychologically the same, regardless.
Hmm.
And so, if you understand those big building blocks, it just doesn't matter. You know, take someone like a big sales coach like Jeremy Miner or somebody like one of the biggest sales gurus, or Andy Elliott, right?
Yeah.
Two giant names in sales. Do either one of them have paint companies? No. Do you think if you put either one of them in the field on your paint company today that they could sell paint jobs?
They would
I do.
smash.
They'd kill it. So like don't tell me that like just because I don't have a paint business or anything, even the successful paint business owners are not painting. So that's kind of the
Hmm.
same. Like I'm not
100%.
painting, you're not painting. What's the difference, right?
Think about
Um
the venture capital that's coming in and scooping up these painting companies, and they just like the numbers and the
Yeah,
potential of the field.
Like Jason Paris and his team, they're coming in, and
Yeah.
what do they do with that? What is it? Aleph Holdings, I think is what.
Yeah.
So they come in, and what do they do in the business? They put some capital in so they can invest in better branding and marketing and systems
Hmm.
and processes and hires and all that thing. But what does that mean? That means the same thing we've been talking about today: improving your marketing,
Yeah.
improving your systems, hiring people to scale up.
Exactly.
It's not rocket science. I mean, they've got their systems and their systems are really, really great. Not taking anything away from that. But at the end of the day, if any sort of investment firm comes in your business, what they're going to do is they're going to look where you are and say, hey, I know if I came in and I plugged in X, Y, and Z processes that we've done in these other companies,
Yeah.
it's going to work. And a lot of people, now that particular holding company only invests in paint companies, but like there's plenty of people that have like all kinds of different companies. And the
Hmm.
process of hiring people doesn't really change. The
Yeah.
process of doing marketing doesn't change as much as you think, right? Is there a minutia difference in marketing between a paint company and like a landscape company? Yeah, a
Sort of.
little,
Language,
not as
maybe.
much. It's language and
Hmm.
visual though. Like the targeting, the settings, zero change,
Yeah.
like zero. You
That's why I
know,
think it's so interesting how you look at things, because it's like you're looking at human behavior, right?
that's
We
all I
talked
look at.
about that a
That's
little
all.
bit
That's
when we
all I
kind of
look
set
at.
up my website. It was like, all I'm worried about is what are these people searching, where they are, and how we contact them and get in front of them.
That's
And
generally the biggest three things you need to answer, right? I think, like, have you ever heard of a guy named Aaron Fletcher?
nah, you're dropping names on me that I just
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
know.
So,
I
so
know
Aaron,
Jeremy Miner and Andy Elliott though.
yeah, yeah, those guys you know. Okay, so Aaron Fletcher is one of the first high ticket coaching programs I ever bought.
Okay.
This is years and years ago. He's still a high ticket coach right now, and he does has a program that is basically how to brand position and how to create sales and marketing processes. And it's relative. It's generic in the sense that it focuses on those foundations, not specific niches. Like any painter could do it, any marketer could do it. You'll learn a lot. It's a great program.
Okay.
But one of the things that he talks about is like one of the things is like how to create like a brand statement that you might not say in verbatim every time, but it's a useful exercise. If you can come up with this, then you can create a lot of other languages and other sales processes and marketing things that would help. And the formula is this: I help blank do or achieve blank so they can blank with or without blank. And if you can answer that statement accurately and fully, from that statement, you can derive 1,001 different kinds of things, from sales literature to marketing things.
That's so funny that you mentioned that.
It's a human thing, man. It's a branding exercise. It's a brand
Yes.
voice exercise, because the branding isn't just like a logo. A brand is also the voice behind it, right? Nike is not just a swoosh. It's empowering athletes, right?
Right.
That's what Nike is. The shoes are just an afterthought. And so that brand has a very, very powerful voice. So when you figure out what your powerful voice is and your thing, and that's just one of many exercises to do it. I help blank. So as a painting company, I help busy homeowners, right, achieve a home that is, protects their home and relaxing, whatever, so they can, all that stuff. Just fill that out, whatever makes sense for you. And it's going to be a little bit different for different people. But I think if you can do that, all of a sudden you have the constructs to be able to create every kind of sales piece you want, every kind of marketing thing that you want. And it's going to be derivatives of it. And you would rarely use that phrase in an actual marketing piece verbatim.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's more like just a teaching tool to kind of help you create an elevator pitch, if you will, about your business.
It's also your offer, right?
100%.
It's one of the exercises that I did with my initial coach when I first hired my first coach, right? It was, you need to be concrete clear on what you offer and who you offer it to.
100%.
Or you will be spinning backwards forever, right? Like,
well, it's like what you offer, who you offer it to, what are the ideal outcomes that you're trying to do, and what are the pain points you're trying to have them avoid. That's essentially what that phrase does, right? And I think it's a really, really powerful thing. StoryBrand has another framework that's similar.
Okay, I heard of them too.
Yeah, StoryBrand is a similar kind of program. I think StoryBrand's a little more popular, but it's the same kind of exercise. And I think it's wildly, wildly powerful. And what's interesting is, back to your thing, is like, what is like the difference between other trades? There is none. And it's interesting because, like, don't get me wrong, I think there's power in like having like a paint specific marketing company. What do they know that's different than like something else? They probably have a keyword list for Google that's pretty true across the country.
Targeting, right?
The target is actually the same, dude. It's the same, right? So like, all contracting companies, unless maybe like if there's some things that are going to be a little different, like an electrician, concrete guy, 24-hour plumbing service, that's going to be a little more transactional. But when you think about beautification concrete contracting services, repainting, remodeling, room additions,
it's not a need.
It's not a need, right?
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, because it's not a need, very rarely are paint jobs required. Sometimes it is, maybe an HOA, maybe you got some stuck crack up, maybe. Very often it's a desire to repaint, change the aesthetics, change the mood in your house.
Very emotional,
right? But so is adding like a barbecue pit in the backyard. Same thing. Do you need that? No.
True.
You want to have a place to have a fire pit and hang out with your
so
guys.
That's what you mean by beautification. That's so interesting.
So that's what I mean. Like, it's not a need. It's a beautification service, and every single one of those. I know that painters want to think that they're unique, and to some degree they are. But honestly, dude, it's a matter of like the emotional triggers from the consumer.
Yeah.
And in that regard, it's identical.
And think about how much money you spend on emotional purchases.
Right.
When you're in the highest state of emotion, right? That's
why the sales process would be the same.
Exactly.
But again, like if you think of it, not all trades are going to fall in that category, because like a 24-hour emergency plumber, like if I've got a broken pipe that's flooding my house,
for sure,
that's a different reaction, right? It's a totally different process. I'm going to handle it different. My decision-making is going to be a different loop. So that's not the same, right? Getting a roof replaced is probably not the same. Not many people do a roof for cosmetic reasons. They do it because they got a leak or a storm or something like that. So there's a difference there. Yeah. But within beautification, it is ridiculously similar.
And think about it like that, right? Like, for the emotional aspect of it, how important is speed to lead then?
Super important.
If I'm even at 7 o'clock, at 8 o'clock at night scrolling through and I see somebody spraying and I'm like, wow, my house could use a nice refresh, right? That morning after you try to call them, I forgot about that feeling. I forgot about that one, right? So having stuff like Drip Drive with the automation or other things, right, that get to them right away and hit them and say, hey, let's get at least a contact, right? It doesn't have to be a call per se. Ideally, yes. But like, let's just get the contact and the process started.
Conversation going. Yeah.
Exactly, because the
And
longer
that's
you
why like
wait,
the booklet is important, right? Because
yes.
Tanner Mullen talks about, he says something, I'm paraphrasing, so Tanner, if you're listening, forgive me if I mess this up, but he says something to the effect of like all sales is kind of like it's inertia, right? It's like a movement, like it gets started and you have to keep that progress going, right? And that's really true for emotional selling. More logical things can maybe differ a little bit, but like in painting, like if they come in, they see a Facebook ad and they convert, they're at a high, like, oh, that'd be really cool to get my house painted. Oh, that was an amazing video. I want my house to look like that. That's what the things that are going on in their head. You give them a day to calm down, they no longer want you. That
Exactly.
emotion dried off, and now it's logical, and they have no interest.
I
Right.
have a perfect story to that.
Go for
So,
it. Fire away.
guy that I haven't worked with him officially, but we talk a good amount. And he kind of told me, hey, this marketing company I hired, they're really fumbling. The leads haven't been great. I haven't booked much work, man. I'm pretty much sick of them. I'm gonna get rid of them. It's been about 4 months or whatever the case may be. And I say, okay, well, talk to me about your, getting to the lead process, right? Your follow-ups and whatnot. He goes, well, Tuesdays and Thursdays, I block time out and I get to all my leads for the week and I call them all at once. And I go, well, bro, that's your problem. Like, we just spent all this time talking about how you need to get to them. It's an emotional sell fast. And my man's just blocking out time to get to the leads. And I'm like, dude, I mean, you literally have a 5 to 10 minute time frame to
Yeah.
touch them. That's it.
Um,
And then it goes.
what's interesting too is statistically, and I don't have the exact numbers, but there's multiple studies that will back this up. And if you're curious, you can just Google it. But the first contractor answer the phone has a giant statistical chance of closing the deal.
Yeah.
Giant. I want to say it's like a 3/4 chance of closing the deal versus a callback. So one of the struggles that I get, and I'll have some similar cases occasionally with like, clients will be like, hey, the marketing's not working. And we go look at it. It's almost always sales. I'm not saying that marketing is infallible. We make mistakes. It happens. But normally it's like the speed to lead stuff, right? And I have one client right now. I'm not going to name names. He's a bigger contractor. He's doing a few $1,000,000 a year. You want to know what his phone answer rate is at the moment in the last like 2 months?
What's that?
56% answer rate, which means 44% non-answer rate. So you're spending how much on leads and you're not answering your phone? It's basically half.
Burning
Every other
cash.
call. And he's like, well, we're calling them back. That's not enough. That is not good enough. I'm not saying that a business owner never going to miss a call. That's
Right.
like, you're going to miss some calls, right? And call them back as soon as you can. But if you have high unanswer rates, you're missing out on a lot.
Yeah, and you might need support, right? I made this video on my social where, you may need to look at, because you might not have the time to get to them. You might not have the discipline to get to them. Maybe there's something there. Hire a call center, hire a virtual assistant, get somebody to
Call center is one of
represent
my
the
favorite
company.
recommendations there.
Yeah, get somebody that represents the company, has a script, knows you guys well, and can speak to the customer. And you will see because we do a little workshop thing too, where we look at people's set rate, right? We look at the metrics and we say, okay, your set rate's at 35%. Imagine if it was at 55%. And then we do the average job size and we see the profit in that. And we say, you're leaving $40,000 a month on the table, right? Just to get to a decent set rate. And people's eyes just go, wow, I couldn't believe it. And then also think of the human nature thing of it, right? If I'm calling and you're not answering, now you look bad for me. And I tell other people, hey, this company is not even getting back to me. They haven't followed up. They came out and I'm trying to go with them, but I haven't heard from them. I mean, God, man, it is what is that called when it's an effect and it keeps going? It's like
I'm not sure.
Some type of effect where it keeps rolling and getting worse.
Oh yeah, like a snowball effect.
There it is.
Yeah.
Snowball effect.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I mean, you said something earlier that I think comes back into play here. You said like your sales process starts with the first thing that they see, right? What happens if the first thing they see is you don't answer your phone and you don't call them back? That is a really hard obstacle to overcome.
You're done.
Your close rate is going to go way down.
Yeah, you're playing catch up.
Yeah, you have to be so good after the fact. But look, if you answer your phone, you're polite and have a good tone of voice. You handle their initial questions politely.
Yeah.
You do some, moderate pre-screening, and you get people on the calendar. You use drip jobs to tell them what to expect before you show up. You have drip jobs remind them before the appointment time, and maybe you call or send them a manual thing, hey, just, this is Micha, I'm on my way, whatever. But you have some professionalism between the booked time and the show time. And then you go there and you just ask questions about what matters to them and what are they looking to do, and when do they want to do it, and what kind of thought process, what is their vision. You just
Yeah.
talk around those things. If you do that, you're gonna crush, like.
That right there, you could just put into a training manual and improve somebody's sales closing ratio by 10%. That right there alone, right? Because
I
you're
would
doing
say
something
I would say
that,
more than 10%. I'd say probably
yeah,
50%. Because no, not change it from 10 to 50%, but you have a 50% improvement. So if
gotcha.
you're at a
Right, right.
20%, it might be a 30, right? You know what I mean? But
Yeah,
like I've seen, if you do all of those things, because each one of those things independently will have an effect. If you put all of them together, dude, it's dangerous.
mm-hmm.
And the
Dude,
and the big guys in the space that we know and work with, the big guys, they're doing that. That's
yeah,
why they're crushing it. It's why they're at multiple millions a year. It's because they're just thinking about each one of those customer processes.
yeah. I mean, and like I kind of mentioned the venture capital stuff that's coming in and creating conglomerates, or they're packing on to these already existing processes that they're
Yep.
using for other companies, right? So if Aleph Holdings comes into your neighborhood with one of their companies, now the competition just got much, much stiffer and you're behind the eight ball.
Oh yeah, 100%.
So it's very, very tough, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah, I love it, bro. What are some of the things that you do in your coaching program to, like, we've talked about all kinds of different subjects. Talk to me about your coaching program. Like what do you do? And like you said a second ago, like you have like everyone's got to have a value proposition. Like what do you do? Well, walk me through that for your coaching program.
Like the offer.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so I work with guys of all different sizes, right? And you'd be surprised. Again, not probably not. um, the people that are even doing a couple million sometimes take on projects that they know aren't profitable,
Yeah,
right? Like I did
I
this
see it.
for Alex with Cabinet Coding Kings. When we kind of started working together, I realized that he said to himself, "Hey, we already are in the kitchen. We're doing the cabinet refinishing. Let's just take on the backsplash and the countertops and sub it out to somebody." Well, we ran the numbers and he got significantly more callbacks. His margins were way lower on those projects, right? It just wasn't worth it for his business. Now he's replacing that time, energy, and effort and that morale kill on his guys for having to touch all the things up, putting it to what he does best with the cabinet refinishing. And that alone had dramatically changed his business.
That's amazing.
So we have to get really clear on what we're good at and execute and then just feed the machine, right?
Yeah.
If you know that you can crank out projects, you have a production manager looking over your stuff, or even just have a good overall process of getting work done, let's get more marketing dollars in there to get more appointments and just watch your profits go through the roof, right? So I try to get these smaller guys to say, hey, you don't have to do deck installation. You don't have to do handyman stuff, right? These big drywall repairs. Stick to what you know, interior, exterior repaints. It's extremely scalable. It's simple. And your guys don't have to know a million things, right? Yes, it's cool to here and there do some woodwork and get a little bit of carpentry dollars for installing the baseboards. But look at how much that affects your production. Maybe your guys are great at it and you can keep running with it, but the numbers are going to tell you what you should be doing, you know?
And normally it's less.
Normally it's less.
Hmm.
Normally also your marketing dollars go way farther when you pinpoint on exactly what you're great at.
Yeah.
It could be, hey, I'm an interior specialist, specialize in everything interior,
Or
skim
like
coating,
Ron over
finish.
at Paint Tigers, he does an exterior only, which is a little bit
Yeah,
a little bit rare. Not that's not super common, but he
exactly.
he owns that and does it really well. He only does exteriors. I think it's really cool, actually.
And all of his systems are probably geared towards exteriors, right?
Everything, bro. Like, man,
So
how good do you got to be if you're doing like that, like a half a dozen exteriors a week? You know what I
yeah.
mean? Good God, your people are going to be so great at it. You
And if I'm a
know?
client, right, and I'm looking at an exterior painter, why not get the guy that does that all day and night? I'd be way more confident, than somebody who does cabinets, interiors,
I don't want a
exteriors.
regular painter to paint my cabinets
Right.
because it's just too different. Like it's the same thing.
I tell people we don't even take them, right? We give them to Alex because he's in my area. But I
Well,
say, hey, I tell them, I say, we'll do it for like flips and rentals, right? Pretty simple Sherwin-Williams products. But
yep.
if you want somebody that's going to give you the best possible product on your cabinets, order it from these different countries and whatnot, that's your guy.
Yeah.
I'm not even going to try and compete with him.
Yeah. Those processes are pretty wild.
Oh, yeah.
They're really crazy.
When you
But
get into
yeah,
like the
he is
2K
really good at it.
products and
Mm-hmm. That's
it's too
nuts.
much.
That's nuts. So, so yeah, you work with processes and stuff like that. Talk to me a little bit about I know you do a lot of like drip jobs and numbers and production rates and stuff with your clients. What do you do there?
Yeah, so we've become like the master of drip jobs. Like when I bring stuff up and people think I work for drip jobs, which I don't. We do have a partnership and whatnot and it works, but it's really because we believe in what he's got going on, right?
Yep.
So we go in and we take, most people will say, hey, I got all the default stuff still in there, right?
Mm-hmm.
My drips are all default. My proposal templates are all default, right? There's no like pizzazz to them, right? We go in and say, how can we? One of the pillars of what I do is professionalize. It's the first thing we worry about.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not professional or portray that professional image, all this other stuff doesn't really matter because people
Agreed.
aren't going to take you serious or see you in that way to
Yep.
charge certain prices.
Yep.
So we use drip jobs as a vehicle to make you look way more professional across the board. So after working with, 100 plus different painting contractors and seeing what works, we basically customize all your drips. We customize your proposal templates. We find a way to host, images that portray your before and afters, your logo, and make it look really, really nice and clean, right?
Mm-hmm.
We go through the details that you offer and what you're presenting to them, and then that whole process. So I basically like
Like the presentation packet, the presentation
exactly.
process.
We
Yeah.
go through an entire session of just raising the bar with your CRM because if you can master that and not have to worry about that ever again and it's all set up, right? One of the cool things we do is in the proposal templates, we do an interior proposal template, exterior, and a cabinet one. And all
Mm.
the pictures are different relative to
Gotcha.
each job. So you have a more ideal chance to get that job because it's
Because it's
solely focused on that.
specialized.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So those are the little things that make big changes. And then aside from that, just educating them on what's available in there, right? Most people that have the software don't understand the production rate side of things, don't
Yeah.
understand how the job costing kind of factors all into that, right? Because one side of it is production rates. Yes, we can have your estimating super dialed in, but if you're not reviewing to make sure your guys are even hitting those numbers and the material cost is accurate, you're just playing
Yeah, and that's the
guess.
difference between production rates and job costing, right? Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
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 If we can't take both and make them work together, you kind of have an incomplete product, right? You may
Mm-hmm.
have your own job costing on the back end. Most people don't, like Excel spreadsheets. I know Nick Slavic has like a whole thing that he does. But
Mm-hmm.
for the most painting companies, if you just use those two features from Drip Jobs, I mean, your money, right? Like
Yeah.
for me, I have my virtual assistant. I teach everybody to do this, or your office admin. Go ahead and every Friday, just put all the job costing for that week's jobs. Now you can have a meeting and say, hey, let's look at the numbers. How did we make out? Who's getting commissioned? It works. It's a
And then
foolproof
I'm
system.
assuming like you can take the info from those things and realize if you need to change your production rates a little bit.
You got it on the
Yeah.
money. And
Yeah.
this is why we brought on one of the guys we brought on as a coach. His name's Ben. He had been in the industry for a long, long time, used Estimate, Rocket Estimate, I think it's called,
Mm-hmm.
other Paint Scout. Now we got him in with production rates, drip jobs, how we do it. And my man will stay up all night just crunching numbers. He's like really, really into it. So I'm like, dude, I need somebody with passion like that on my team. Let's bring you on and we'll figure this out. So it's been
That's
really cool. It's
awesome.
been really fun. But you can get a little over, like, zealous with the numbers and crunch them a little too hard. So that's why we try and simplify everything. So it is a lot of data, right? When I show you some of the PDFs, cool thing is I explain it very, very simple, give you a system that you can teach somebody tomorrow how to estimate and you're good to go.
That's awesome. Well, hey, brother, if someone wanted to get in touch and work on those production rates and everything, how would they get in touch with you?
Yeah, you can reach me mainly at Instagram. It's at Paint Pro Aiden. DM me. I'm constantly talking with people. Yeah, check out my videos. We also give, free game on there. you can go through and just watch my videos, and I'm sure you'll find value. So yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome, dude. Well, hey, man, I really enjoy the talk. Like I said, every time we chat, I always learn something. I enjoy your company. I enjoy your professionalism, what you bring to the community. Thanks so much for joining us.
Yes, sir.
And you got any final thoughts before we sign off here for the day?
You going to PCA?
I am going to PCA. Hope to see you there, brother. You going to be up there?
Yes, sir, man. They got me doing some stuff. I got like a breakout brain meld session. We're going to be on the estimating panel. It's going to be pretty cool. It's going to be fun.
Awesome, man. Well, I'll see you there. And everyone else, we'll see you soon. Take care.
See you guys.
Hey, if you like this podcast, please follow and share. If you're looking for help growing your contracting business, I invite you to join my free community where we go live, share all sorts of tips and resources and free trainings. Plus, you get help from me, my team, and from peers. The link for that group is down below, and we'll see you next time.